Welcome everyone to another session with New Missions. On this one, we shall be looking at how can we make this pretty autumn leaves fall in Blender. It's really quick and simple, and I think it's pretty too. So let's head on to Blender now. So the first thing you do is bring a plane, scale it up, move it a little up. I've set up here two windows. On one is what I see through the camera, and the other one is my working viewport, so that I can see what's going on. Since we don't need a whole big and I'm just scaling the plane on the x-axis just to fit the width of the camera. Next thing I do is assign the plane with the particle system. I try to play around with the particle system first just to get the simulations right, and right now I'm just trying that, changing the life value, changing the numbers of particles and all, but I think I end up with like 500 frames, 5000 number of particles, and they start emitting from 0, and the lifetime of the particle is 500 frames, just so they don't disappear right in the middle. The next thing I do is decrease the gravity, because I want the leaves fall to be a little slow, not very fast. I'm not decreasing the speed because that will help decrease the falling speed of the particle. The next thing I do is bring in some waves. I just hit Shift A force field, and I bring in turbulence here so that it scatters the particles everywhere. I end up increasing the strength of this turbulence. I mean, the more the randomness, the better, right? Because the nature is not so even. And when the leaves fall, they are completely random. Then I bring in the next force field, turbulence again. You can I increase the size, strength, and flow. You can increase the flow too, but I think the important thing not to forget is the noise, because that fluctuates the air passing through the particles as the frames progresses, and as in nature the force of the air is not constant or similar. It's better to give it some noise so that there's some variability in the force. And then I bring in another force field just to add in more randomness. I'll stick this just in the middle with a greater flow, because I want it to cover more area. Just play around with the settings. That is what I'm doing here, trying to get a feel of how, right now they are balls but they would be leaves, so trying to get a feel of, do they feel natural or no. After I'm satisfied with the simulation, it's time to bring in some leaves. We're just going to slap in the leaf sticks in the plane. I subdivided, but it's not really necessary to subdivide, so I'm just trying to see how the planes would interact in this system. For that, go to the particles, render, render as object and assign the object. Mine is plane, so I just gave the plane. Click on the rotation and randomize those values, because the more random it is, the more natural it looks. The more random it is, the more natural it looks. Then also remember to change the scale, because leaves are of different sizes, right? Over here I'm just trying different angles, which might be the optimal for the flow. I actually wanted to have some roll of the planes in the camera, but I think I'd have to have really wide view in order to have that, so but I think it's fine even without that. Just increasing angular velocity, tweaking the settings, and I'm not anticipating to get the results, but I'm just trying to see how would it affect. And the final settings I use on this whole animation is 10 frames per, so I'm experimenting for over 500 frames. The number of particles I've used is 5000, so that's like 10 particles per frame, and that is what I use at the end too, even for a 1 minute video, like 10 particles per frame. So 1 minute video, I rendered it out in 24 frames per second. That's 1440 frames, so 14,400 particles. Okay, now let's give our plane some texture. I just downloaded some free textures. I just googled it. I was trying to find front and back of the same leaf, but I was not able to, so I ended up using two different foliage for the front and back, and it really does not matter unless you're doing a close-up scene or there's a rollover of the leaves. Even if there's a rollover, it does not matter. Okay, so go to this shader editor, new material, and then bring in your texture. And over here I have put in the color into the subsurf. That's a mistake. You'll have to either put in at the yellow value of subsurf, not the one right below, but the one just above the metallic. I thought this was in PNG image, but unfortunately it was not, but not a big deal. Blender can handle it. We can tweak some settings and get the alpha thing from the Blender. So for that, to assign the alpha, bring in a color ramp, give it the color from the texture, and just check the output. What do you see? For that, Control Shift and right click on the color ramp. This only works if you have Node Wrangler add-on enabled, and it's an inbuilt add-on. Just go on the preference and enable it. Okay, now as you can see, it changes into black and white. Black is 0, white is 1, so only the information from white is going to the alpha channel, so all the zeros you won't see. So you can pretty much alpha out mostly clear images using this. As you can see, the alpha is controlled by the color ramp. Let's give it some bump. Bring in the normal map, add vector, normal map, plug in the color to color, and then normal to normal. That'll kind of make it appear like the crease is a little below, the leaf is a little up. I didn't have different roughness texture, so I tried to give it through the color, but that made it a little shiny, so I just increased the roughness. And since leaves are not fully opaque, you could bring in a different shader and mix it, but I just gave it a little bit of translucency right in this principal shader. Okay, so time for the back surface of the leaves. As I said, I tried to find the back surface of the same leaves, but I was not able to, so I just ended up using a different leaves foliage that kind of looked similar but was different in color, so it would give a little bit of variation too. And this too was not a PNG image, so not a big deal again. Sometimes it does not show up if you have not changed the blend mode to alpha blend or alpha clip, so make sure you have that setup changed. By default it's not in alpha clip or alpha blend, so make sure you change that. Bring in another principal BSDF, give it to the color, bring in a normal map, give it to the normal, bring in a color ramp, give it the color, and look for the, and you'll have to judge on this one yourself, and the foliage are pretty much the same, so I didn't have to tweak anything from the first setting. Okay, so now you have two foliages. So the next thing would be to mix two textures. Just add in a mix shader, but this will not just cut it out. As you can see, you see both the textures. We don't want that. What we want is only one texture on one side, and it's not that difficult. It's just one node you'll have to, it's just one more thing you'll have to do. But before that, what I tried to align one leaves with the other so that it would kind of feel like the same leaf, but that's not necessary, and I ended up not being able to, and I ended up unsuccessful on that attempt, so I just gave up, realizing it would not matter. Okay, time to see some Blender magic. Okay, you just bring a geometry node, add search geometry, type in geometry, and then you get it. You see all these nodes here. For now we only need back facing. This is just saying that there's something at the back, just so the front end, and Blender does it for you. You don't even need to do anything except bring in the node and plug it into the face of the mix shader. Voila, you have a leaf texture. So all you gotta do now is go into your viewport and check the simulations, check it appears, do you like it? If not, change the settings of the wind, tweak some colors, bring in some colors if you like. I'm not doing this in a very good laptop, so what I did for the lighting was I just increased the background light and then brought in a plane, rotated it 90 degrees, shift A, object, plane, RX90, took it very far at the back, scaled it so that it would cover the camera, and slapped in a black material onto it. I increased the roughness so that it would not reflect any light, and then there you go. And there you have it. You have an autumn fall leaves animation. I think it's pretty. I think it's time for fall now. So maybe a pretty good time to make these animations, eh? Thank you for your time. See you next time.